In this recording, we're going to cover how Winshuttle can integrate through SOAP Web Services. In this example, we would have a business author who would create a Winshuttle script, which is an SAP interaction, and publish it to our foundation site as a SOAP Web Service. Once that SOAP Web Service is available, a Blue Prism digital worker would be able to call that web service. There's native support for SOAP Web Services in Blue Prism's Process Studio. And that web service then would basically interact with Winshuttle and return the results, in this case, to Blue Prism. Here I'm in Studio with an example of a material update, and in the mapping we've mapped it to XML, which would basically be leveraged in our foundation web forms, but it can also be published directly as a web service and then leveraged in another product like Blue Prism. So the step would be to create the script, test it, and then publish it as a web service, and basically then it would end up on the foundation site. And I've gone to our web services page, and you'll see here is an example of the WSDL. So this is the path basically that you would provide to call that SOAP web service. In Blue Prism, there's a place on the System tab to add a SOAP web service, which I've already done. And if I edit this, this is the WSDL, so I copied and pasted that from the Winshuttle Foundation site. In order to execute it, you need to authenticate. You have to be a licensed user set up on the Foundation site, so there's authentication that has to happen. There's timeouts, and then it's basically going to read that web service, and this is the name of the web service that I gave it. And then these are the different methods or actions that can be called in that SOAP web service. By default, it selects all of them, and you can pick and choose which one get exposed. And that's basically it. So now let's take a look at the Blue Prism process. I'm in Process Studio, and this is going to be very simple, and I have two different examples. I'm using two different methods of the SOAP web service. There's a number of parameters that would be implemented, and you'll see here for the action, I selected that SOAP web service, and here I'm running with SAP credentials, and then there's a number of collections or basically groups of fields that get passed in. So I have the actual run parameters, which are the input fields, the language, the credentials, and whether we're doing a validate, in other words, just checking the data before we post it. The same thing would happen with the bulk, and in this case, bulk means I'm calling SAP once and I'm updating potentially or creating multiple objects. In this case, materials, but again, this could be leveraged to create invoices, update customers, create customers, any kind of SAP interaction. So if we look at here the input parameters, I imported that from the SOAP web service, so it just pulled in all the field names nicely for me, and then I just have to go through here and populate the fields, and those fields values might get passed in from another process and then leveraged here in that SOAP web service. The difference with the bulk input parameters is that I now have a number of rows that have the values in them, but they are the exact same values. I'm just passing in for more than one, so there's the first one and there's the second one. And then I'm also passing in SAP credentials, the language, and then I will get the results here in also a collection. So all I have to do is hit reset and click execute. It's a bit like watching paint dry, but it will execute, and we will get results here in a moment when it finishes. And if we look at the current values, you'll see there's no changes made, or it could have said, hey, I updated it. We'll swap over now to the bulk. Again, it's calling the same SOAP web service, but in this case, we're going to be updating multiple materials in this particular process. So I'll hit reset, and we'll go ahead and execute, and then we'll get the results here, and we'll have multiple rows of results. So if we look here now, this is the material was changed. In this case, there were no changes made. And based on those results, you can then route the process to do something else. So again, this is how we would leverage our Winshuttle scripts as a SOAP web service. This would be for Foundation or Evolve customers only. If you just have Studio without our server-based products, then this is not an option for you. But if you do have Foundation or Evolve, you can take those Winshuttle scripts that you've created, publish them as a SOAP web service, and leverage them here in Process Studio and call them to interact with SAP.